Hello, this is Zach, and I'm going to show you a new feature in the Takeoff program for Frit patterns. So I'm going to start in Revit, but this also works in AutoCAD, which I'll also show you. Um, so in Revit, the way this works is there are generic models that represent the Frit pattern. So you can see here that I have two different kinds of Frit patterns, A and B. And if I edit this family, you see here this is the actual model of it. It's 2 feet wide, and I have two different types in here, a B type, which is yellow, and an A type, which is red. Otherwise, they're the same size. I put this little notch in here just for reference, but that doesn't need to be here visually. Okay. So I've placed these all on this little test project. Every unit in this test project is exactly the same. They're all the same size. They all have the same mullions. They have the same glass. The only difference between them are the Frit patterns. So I've placed some of the Frit patterns about a foot from the edge here. Some are 2 feet from the edge. Um, and then sometimes it's A or B. Sometimes it's even rotated around like that, where they have slightly different orientations. Um, so what happens here, and here you can see it in the Takeoff browser, all of these units, they're unnamed right now, and none of the glass has mark numbers yet, and the width and height are all the same. So in each of these um, types, there's a takeoff components property, which looks like this, and this describes to the takeoff program what Frit pattern this is. So this one is the name of it is A. The origin of it is 0, 0, and that's using the coordinate system of the family that we just saw. This is which direction the owner should be at, so it's in the negative Z direction. The owners that it's looking for is infill, and usually you don't have to fill this in. Usually it's going to be me that fills this in for your project, for your Frit patterns, so that these get all placed similarly. The owner is up to a maximum of 24 inches away. And then these properties here give the takeoff program some information about what to consider as identical Frit patterns. So this Frit pattern is symmetric if you rotate it 180 degrees. So I'm telling the takeoff program that. Also the origin, I want it to be projected in the negative Y direction to the border of the glass. That way the origins are always the same, even if my origin in the of the generic model is slightly different. And then it'll always project toward the lower left of the glass. So I'll set this up on your project for each of your Frit patterns, and then that tells the takeoff program how to treat this Frit pattern. So when I run UPD on this, you'll see that it changed the glass. The glass gets different mark numbers depending on how its Frit pattern is. So even though that these are all the same identical unit, with the exception of the Frit pattern, they all get different unit numbers because of that Frit, and they get different mark numbers based on that Frit pattern. They all have the same prefix though. So you could, in theory, not recommended, have everything with the same type, Frit pattern or no Frit pattern. But that's probably not a good idea because then the order form will be one tab with all of type 1, and some of them will have Frit patterns and some won't, and that's just confusing. So you probably want to change your glass type to match at least which pattern you're using. But it numbered all the units. We can see here that I think this 137 is sort of the basic no Frit pattern unit. But then a 138, say, unit 343 is the yellow frit pattern to the left, etc., etc. So the position and the type of frit pattern is controlling what these mark numbers end up being. So we're going to go to AutoCAD now. Actually, let's just stay here and create these tag drawings. So I'm going to output the unit drawings into AutoCAD based on this Revit model. Sure, metal and glass, and we'll do. I have a bunch of other stuff in this project, but these are these units here, I think. And then we'll go to AutoCAD. So in AutoCAD, what you need to make are these sort of frit pattern templates, I guess you could call it. These live in your fabs folder. So my database is in this takeoff folder here. Under fabs, you can make a folder called frit patterns, and inside of here, you make your different frit patterns. So this one's the A pattern. I gave it a certain hatch. I put some dimensions on it, so this shows that it's 2 feet wide. And I also put this special dimension called 2 glass. And what happens is when you UPD or when you output the glass patterns, this dimension that's labeled 2 glass will get stretched out. The second point of it will get stretched out to the glass border. And then this text will be replaced with the actual dimension. So it'll dimension the location. And you can add more dimensions than this if you need them. If you need up and down dimensions, whatever, put whatever you need. I made the pattern oversized, so it's about 600 inches tall. That way, no matter how big the glass is, this thing will cover it. This object here, this rectangle, is a region object, and it's important that it's a region. And I put it on the hatch layer. So, and then I made this hatch here, and it's associative to that region object. So to create a region, first you just draw a polyline, and then you can run the region command like that, and then select the polyline. It'll convert it into a region for you. So what this will do is it will, when you UPD or when you draw the glass patterns, it will insert this file at the origin from specified by your glass tag, and it will trim this region up to make it only cover where the glass is. And then because of that, because this is an associated hatch, it will also change. So it'll probably be best to see what this looks like, and you could just keep playing with this thing until you get it to look right. I've already messed with this a lot, so let's take a look at the unit drawings that I just outputted. I think I just outputted. All right, so here's one of the units that the program created for me. And if I go in here and do LMG, when I do LMG, it shows the glass tag here. And if I double click on it like a normal glass tag, there's this new section here for frit patterns. This particular unit doesn't have a frit pattern. This is my one without a frit pattern at all. So I'm gonna, let's go to a different unit. I'll UPD this one though, just so you can see, so we can see that in the end result. There's a lot of random stuff in here. Okay. So there's my glass 137, which we saw in Revit didn't have any frit pattern. This one should on unit 342. So here's my glass tag, and when I double click on it, it filled in this information. So, and this came from Revit, but if you weren't working with Revit, you could type in this information yourself on each glass tag. But this is using frit pattern A, and the origin of it is at 22.5 inches, 0. And this origin is always relative to the lower left corner of the glass, the final glass, not the daylight where the tag may be, but the final glass size. So it takes into account all these bytes and stuff. And then this is the rotation of that pattern. So basically what it's going to do when I UPD this is going to take that Frit pattern A drawing that we saw, insert it at the lower left corner, move it to this origin, do a rotation on it, which in this case there isn't one, and then do the process that I told you about with the trimming up of that Frit pattern. If there are multiple Frit patterns on here, which I don't anticipate having, you can put other ones here using JSON data, which is similar. It's exactly the same as the format that I showed you earlier, which looks like this. This is the one that I was using in Revit, but you would have a similar sort of formatted data string to show other Frit patterns where it has the name and the origin and the rotation. So let's see what happens when I UPD this tag. So you can see that it took that A drawing in here, which is on the hatch layer, which is a different color on this drawing. It put it in here, it trimmed up the region, trimmed up the hatch, and it took the dimensions, it took that 2 glass dimension and stretched it over to the edge of the glass so that I get a real number here, a real dimension where this Frit pattern is. So let's just see that on the next light. Every time you UPD one of these tags, it will redo that. So if you made changes to the pattern, you can just UPD your unit and you'll see it there. So I don't know what this one's going to look like. It might use hatch pattern A or B, not sure. Let's find out. So if you're doing this in AutoCAD without Revit, you would have to put your information on the glass tags manually, and then make your little pattern drawings, and you'll see this feature come up. So this is using hatch pattern B, which isn't the slash lines, it's crosshatch, and similar placement. It looks like this dimension here is to the daylight, but you'll see that in the pattern drawings, when it does the final pattern drawing, this will go to the edge of glass, and it will be a different number because of the bytes on this tag. So now that let me UPD the last few of these, and then I'll show you the glass output. All right, so I've UPD'd all my units, and I see the Frit patterns on my units, and my shop will see them too. Let's go to the Takeoff program, and I'm going to make sure my filter is set up correctly to all units. And there's a lot more units than just these in this job, but it should be fine. And I'm going to export the glass form to Excel, putting it in the standard materials release to PM folder. And then wait for this to finish, which usually doesn't take long. Now, if there's Frit patterns in your project, you'll see another window come up, this window here, where it's drawing the Frit patterns. You should wait for this to finish before you start opening your patterns. So they're going to be just like normal pattern lights. They're going to be in the glass DWG folder under the place where you output the glass order form. So this is the glass order form I outputted, and there's a glass DWG folder here with the drawings for only the lights that have patterns or have Frit patterns, or both. So let's open one of these, and you'll see that it did a very same treatment using that hatch pattern. This is pattern B because it's the crosshatch, but it takes the same picture, inserts it in here with the dimensions, and it will do that for even rectangular glass. Normally, this would only get drawn if it was a pattern light with non-rectangular glass. Now it will draw it also if there's a Frit pattern. So that's basically how it works. You can edit these afterwards to get whatever you want, but as you can see, this is pretty clean on just a rectangular light. On a non-rectangular light, there would be angles and all kinds of extra dimensions that you may have to clean up. But that's the whole process. Thank you very much.